Hi there, BJ.
Good
We're
morning,
back again.
Steve.
So, before we catch up, for those of you who are tuning in or listening to this really quickly, our initial plan for today kind of changed. So don't if we were kind of deliberately vague about it in our description on the Facebook page on the Volleyball Coaches and Trainers Facebook page because we weren't sure that everything was going to come together today, and lo and behold, it hasn't. So if you were looking for guest commentary, whatever, that's not going to happen today. But we're going to have a little short chat today, so this will be a short one, and we'll start off with how was your Thanksgiving?
Yeah, good. Uneventful. Ate too much and watched some TV, a little football.
Yep.
Saw family, and everybody's doing well. How about you?
About the same. We had family in. My son came in from Chicago. He's headed back there. So this morning was an early morning to drop him off for an early flight. Got breakfast and everything. And by the time I got here, I'd had done two or three things already, and checking out, making sure everything was working for today. So went well. I thought maybe we could talk about a few things. The first one is kind of the since it's a Turkey Day hangover, everybody's got tryptophanitis probably by now, and we're all doing the leftovers. We're kind of almost left over on the volleyball season, at least at the high school level. At the college level, there's more to be done, and then we've got other things like AVCA. We could talk about that first, but I thought we'd talk about a little bit about what's your recovery looking like? Because other coaches are, usually by the time you get into this, maybe you've got your banquet coming up or something like that. But other than that, you're winding it down, and I always find I need a little bit of recharge. So what recharge things are you either doing or have you heard from others that might be fun?
I think that one of the bigger things, and yet this, from Mickle, is if you're waiting till the end of the season to do an instant recharge, you've waited too long. Uh,
Fair enough.
it's like it's very similar to mental types of issues, mental training. You can't wait until championship week to get yourself mentally prepared to to have mental flexibility training or to head off the things that are coming your way. So for me, I start thinking about it a little bit before the season. How is the end of the season going to manage itself out? Looking at the season realistically, where do I think we're going to finish? How many weekends are we going to do? We have a chance at going, the following week or 2 weeks, to get to that highest level of competition, and then making sure during the season that you've got a lot of stuff buttoned up by that last couple of days so that when you do get to your last practice, you probably you've got a banquet afterward and you've got some equipment check in, but hopefully those are the last two things that you've got to do, and then maybe can take some time off. But that takes some discipline, and I didn't do it perfectly this year. It's my first time back coaching high school in a long time, so it just you have to start that planning early. And for me, it really is just taking some time off, evaluating the season, what looked good, what didn't, what were you on the same page with administrators, assistant coaches, players, parents, the stakeholders. Uh, do a little bit of that sort of reflection and try and drop it as much as possible and leave it alone. I know not everybody has that option because there's club
Sure.
and other things that are going on. I,
Yeah, I
I
wound my season down with letting parents know about all the clubs in the area and gathering information from those clubs. I put a quick a Google form together because when I went out to the website, some of them were excellent, but a lot of them kind of left out little details that parents are going to want to know. Where do they practice? what age groups practice where, what time do they practice, how much is it going to cost, and they sometimes have that, but I wanted to put it all in one place, so I did, and just provided that a link to that spreadsheet to the parents. Said, hey, clubs are updating it as we go along, so you might see new information. Here's when tryouts are. I encourage players to play. And we may do open gyms for those players who can't. And a lot of it for me is learning about the school, learning about like a number of the athletes are in basketball season now. And so, getting them into club probably doesn't make sense. And then we've got soccer players and we've got softball players. And so, when you have a lot of that, you go, okay, probably open gyms on a regular basis. It might only be once a week or maybe twice a week. Will have to suffice because club doesn't make sense for them. And then there's the economics. At least in my particular situations, the economics preclude a lot of that until they decide to specialize in a sport. And I don't encourage them to do that. I don't say don't, but I don't go, yo, you have to. I'm like, no, you do, do what you do for you, and we'll fit that into the team concept. But when you come to play for us, you're part of the team, and the team needs to count on you in whatever role we wind up giving you. And if you're not up for that, probably not your sport or your program. But
Right.
I've been enjoying a little bit off, but I got my banquet coming up this week, and I'm not even sure I've got all the awards because my district has kind of a setup where I'm not sure I'm going to have them ready yet, but we'll figure it out. It'll all work out. Always does.
Yeah. 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 The off season's tricky. We're in the school that I'm at is in a situation where not everybody is either willing or able to play club. So it does have to get a little creative to get players playing in the off season. I don't love playing inside all the time. The winter obviously forces us to. We probably could play some snow volleyball. That's quickly becoming an Olympic sport. The I prefer the beach or the grass, particularly once it's nice enough outside. I have to still believe, I do believe you could get good enough to be competitive if you can get the buy-in from your players that we're going to go and we're going to go and compete on the beach. We're going to go compete in the grass and do that enough. I don't know that showing up once a week is enough to be able to compete. We play at the largest school level, so all the other schools all have kids that are playing club, and some of ours certainly do, but not all. And it's tricky. Just finding creative ways for them to touch the ball and to go play
Yeah,
is important, even if it's just maintenance. I think you can, maybe if you're playing once a week, you can maintain a skill level. I think if you're not playing at all, you're going to start losing some skill.
right.
It probably takes playing 2, 3, 4 times a week to get
Yeah.
better, to improve that.
Yeah, I've found, just I told some of the girls, I said, hey, listen, check out the local multi-generational facility that we have. They've got a gym. They've got 16 and up volleyball. I'm like, hey, girls, you can go play. Maybe freshmen can't play, but sophomores on up can go play, and you'll get some valuable experience. Pardon me, if nothing else, you're going to see some interesting shots from some older players that might get you thinking about how to play the game.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I agree. Adding that next layer of players, we're we're working on at our school. We have a new varsity boys program. It's the second year. It was a club program last year, but now it's a varsity program this year. We're working on getting the girls who are more skilled playing with the boys who are more physical, and hopefully learning from each other about in those ways merging some. But we'll see. You got to be creative, and I think you can't. You got to take some time off, get yourself mentally, maybe even physically back to where you are good, and then hopefully you've spent some time and are figuring out creative ways to get your kids into the gym as best you can within the rule set and within their busy lives.
Yep. Well, let's talk AVCA, and I'm going to rely on you for this because I don't do a lot of that, and that may change. But right now, it's kind of
Sure.
coming up and an opportunity for some coaches to get some learning and some connecting done.
Yeah, the NCAA tournaments are going on. Division three starts first, and a lot of those matches have already occurred. They're down to their quarterfinals, which will all be starting the 29th of November, so next weekend. And then the semifinal is the 30th, and then take a day off for the final. The championships are on December 2nd. So they kind of kick off the championship series for volleyball. I don't know, and it wouldn't be hard to figure out. I don't know where those matches are, if they're on ESPN Plus or if that's an NCAA feed.
Yeah.
But it's easy enough to do a little bit of googling and for I know these Division three matches. I've watched them before. They're great matches. There's a lot of kids playing Division three that easily could have played Division one. That certainly these the top schools, and a lot of names that if you pay attention to girls or women's Division three, you'll know some of the names. There's a couple of newcomers as well, but there's a lot of good volleyball to be had there in Division three. Then the following weekend, Division two, and I think they are somewhat the forgotten, not really forgotten, but they're an overlooked division. I think Division three gets a lot of play because there are so many schools, and it's pretty broad across the United States. Division one obviously gets all 98% of the attention, but Division two has some great volleyball to be had. That's the following weekend, and for whatever reason the dates aren't exactly coming up, but it'll be around the eighth, ninth, uh, eighth, ninth, 10th, I believe, is Division two championship, and um, there as well, the athleticism that you see, particularly at the top of the bracket, when you get down to the quarters, semis, there's a lot of great talent there. The players have worked just as hard, just as long, and I would say the same thing. It's worth it, particularly if you know you want some of that championship feel. I know Division one is on, but if you want to see some players playing for championships, these next 2 weekends coming up with Division three and Division two are excellent uh,
Yeah.
outlets for that.
And
And then
as you
obviously
watch
ABC.
those games,
Go ahead.
as you
Go.
watch those games too, you can probably see some interesting tactics that maybe more variety as well, because you might see some limitations that you can say D1 programs have limitations, and they do, but you might see some more glaring ones that coaches and teams have to deal with. And seeing that might give you some ideas, especially downstream. When you're, or I guess upstream. Where you're in these broader programs where you have, maybe one or two highly skilled players and some moderately skilled players and some less skilled players in a high school program. What other things could you do? You're probably not going to see a lot of that at the highest level.
Yeah, I don't think you do necessarily. I just read an article this week, just because it's local, about Wisconsin doing some of that. They've had some injury issues, and they kind of they plug and play a little bit, where they'll pull a kid out that's had some injury, maybe stick them, rather than going back into a middle where they were playing previously. They might hit on the right for a little bit. That's a little bit of what's been occurring, but there too, they're searching for places where players can be successful, and I think you do see a lot of that at the Division 3 level, especially since it's so hard for them. Division 1, you can watch every match through volumetrics. Division 3 doesn't have that same level of ability, so you may be playing teams you've never seen before. There's a lot more thinking quick on your feet. You may have to um, you may have to put a player in to get a larger block, or to get a little bit better defense, or to get something that maybe you felt like you were a better team, but the matchup dictates a change. And I think you're probably right. You could see a little bit more of that in Division 3 or Division 2, but you know, it's volleyball. It's high level volleyball. It's fun to watch. The Some of these programs, locally, Wisconsin Oshkosh has started to get a lot of people packing their gym. They're getting a lot more people in that gym at times than some of the Division 1 programs are getting. So there's a following for the programs, local, obviously local following, and
Yeah.
it's good stuff to watch. So
Well,
that's good.
for a coach who may be first time AVCA, and
Mm.
let's take the matches out of it. Um, what's your advice for a coach that's kind of walking in for the first time?
Well, the first thing is get prepared pretty early. Find your running mates. That a lot of that would have happened months ago, but you get you put your network out. Who's staying with who? Where are you staying? How are you traveling? Got to ask a lot of people. Most of the time, the head coaches have a pretty good idea, and they're looking out for the assistants or for the newcomers. Um, the I think one of the critical things there is first, make sure that you're not in a rush. Uh, get there with plenty of time. You don't have to see every session. Take your time to map out, what do I really want to see, and I would probably do that at the very beginning of the clinic. As soon as you have a schedule of what's going on, kind of map out, and there too, you got to leave yourself some breaks. You don't have to go to 4 6 sessions a day. Matter of fact, the times that I've gone, there's usually I'm thinking about, in particular, my first time going, there was one session each day that stood out far above all the others. And ironically for me, it wasn't, hardly any of them were about volleyball. you know, Mickle
Yeah.
had a great session. Jen Fry had a great session. It was a big eye opener. Dr. Jen Fry nowadays. Um, she was super. Met a couple people in that classroom uh, that I'm still friends with. Um, Carrie McDonald from Canada tore apart serving in a new way, so that, I guess, was volleyball related. That was another day, and then um, friends of the podcast, Emily Swanson, Ray Vance did a great session on just the power struggle, between coaches and players, and harassment, uh, uh, that that topic, and very personal. Did that in a very personal way. Not volleyball related, but important to our sport. So I think just map out those sessions, and I would. Most of these coaches, I mean, every coach wants to get that edge and find something that is going to put you over the top in your conference. Well, you probably know all the volleyball you need to. I think the fringe stuff, the how to build a culture, how to build a team, how to look at a practice differently, um, how to build the infrastructure around your team. Those are the places I think where bigger gains can be made, because the volleyball, I mean, we're squeezing as much volleyball out of these kids as we possibly can by the time we get them at college level. there's more to learn. Not saying there isn't, but I
Yeah, and I
think the
think an
bigger,
important thing there is that a high school coach, a junior high school coach, can learn things from going to one of these. Now, will some of the things be a little more advanced or maybe a bit intimidating? Well, sure, but that's how you kind of go. Okay, how do I how do we take that concept and bring it back to my level? How do I remember years ago when I was working with Mike Hewlett and Mike was like, hey, I need you to work with the 13s, which was our pretty much entry level teams. Said, I need you to do that because we're not getting them off to a good enough start. And it's just little stuff that you learn over time that you can use with players. And you have every different philosophy. So I'm not going to go into how I personally like to do it because I have a feeling for what I think works. But I every now and then I see something and go, man, I should have thought of that.
yeah,
And we've had plenty of guests on who've certainly changed what I do in the gym.
sure,
So if you're a brand new coach, you're going to see a lot of you're probably already doubting yourself. You're in the gym, you're helping the kids. That's where you start, and then you go, okay, how can I help them more? And
yeah,
just add to that. And maybe we'll close this off because we had a nice discussion off air to start. And we're just going to start with a drill, not one that we saw online, or although I saw one this week that brought it to mind of, oh boy, drill design. So many of you are going to go, hey, I've already done this. I did this in Cap 1 and Cap 2 and Cap 3, or if you didn't do those, you've done them in other contexts. But BJ was telling you a great story about how one might go about taking a drill that's probably pretty common or something along its lines is common and turn it into a better drill. And of course, every drill can be, or every game like or every situation can be improved by looking at it and going, what's it accomplishing? But I think that was a really good example. We'll finish with that, and hopefully this will be helpful to someone along the lines.
yeah, yeah. Just real quick on AVCA,
Yes, sorry.
two quick points.
Hmm.
One is they always have at the beginning a lecture about the first timers. I would go to that. Swente used to give that. Brian Swente, he's an excellent speaker and talked uh, in a pretty sensible way for newcomers. So if anybody's going for the first time, that's a great. I don't think Brian's coming this year, but I'm sure somebody else would give that same sort of presentation. What do I do if I'm here for the first time? And the second, you can't, as you're walking around the place. I think some of the better things that I recall from the conventions are meeting people in the hallway or at the social events. You can't be afraid to just walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, I really love your program. Can you tell me a little bit about your philosophy?" I mean, that's if you go to somebody and ask them a question, almost every coach that I've spoken to at AVCA is willing to uh, to stand and talk with you for a little bit. If you and even if you just know the littlest bit about their program, um, and then I guess along that line, you don't have to find the on TV coaches to get great advice. You're going to get great advice from those coaches that you see on television, or maybe you get good advice from them. They certainly know how to speak the game and know how to talk about the game. But there are a ton of coaches out there that are winning conferences that are doing it with kids that are overachieving. And don't be afraid to uh, pull your phone out and go, oh, okay, that coach is from here. They had a great season. Let me ask them about what they did. Can't be afraid of that. Um, yeah, Steve and I were talking about an exercise that I used to do when I was coaching coaches, and we started with we'd always ask somebody, what's your team bad at? What do you want to get better at? And one year it was, well, we don't play defense very well in one. our either the setter or whoever is playing behind the setter, if the setter's in front row, we're not playing good defense in one. I said, all right, well, how is it that most, you know, not you necessarily, you the coaches in the room, but how is it that most people would attack getting better in one? A very standard thing that a coach would do, and maybe it's common sense, but I don't know. I wouldn't say it's common sense, but I think you see people do this. Is the Your reaction is to get a box out, stick the box on the other side of the court in four. Coach gets up on the box and starts ripping balls at a line of players that are standing in one. So we got that uh, we got that set up in our gym. I'm pretty sure it was four players. I had a player go over to the whiteboard and take stats on how many touches we were getting. So I got up on the box. I hit 10 balls, and I looked over the statistician after we were done. I said, "All right, how many touches did everybody get?" And the coach said, the coach at the whiteboard said, "Well, they either got two or three." We hit 10 balls, four players, two or three balls. So 10 touches. And I said, well, what about the other? What about the rest of the touches? And like, well, all they were doing was digging a ball. And ball went to space, or maybe a setter was catching it. I don't remember how we were doing it. Like, well, catching really isn't a touch. How about the coach on the box? Yeah, there were 10 touches by the coach. So in that drill, that standard, digger's drill that everybody has done probably at least sometime in their life, the coach got half the touches and the rest of the team got the other half of the touches. So we started brainstorming, how do we get better at that? And it really was hard. And I think this is the resistance you find in volleyball coaches and trainers and in a lot of gyms. We coach a lot through tradition and what we saw other people do, and it was hard to pull this group of coaches toward, what's an improvement we can make. Well, the first one was easy. Have the setter, after the coach hit the ball at the digger, have the setter set the ball. Then somebody else, we ran through that, counted the touches, and somebody said replace the coach on the box, put a player on the box instead. So now the players are all getting they're getting all the touches. So we worked through that exercise to the point where the player was hitting a ball from the box to the digger. Digger digs to setter. Setter set it outside, and then the hitter was catching the ball and putting it in a bag. Like, all right, now who is getting what we would call a game-like touch? And we had a discussion about if the digger really was or wasn't. It's my opinion that the digger wasn't, because they weren't seeing a full read from the hitter. We felt like the setter was getting a real game-like touch, because they're seeing a ball go to one, even though they knew it was going to one. The touch was still game-like in that they have to read and react, read the passer or digger, react to where the ball went, set the ball to to their hitter. Like, well, what about the hitter? Is the hitter getting a game-like touch? No. How about the other hitter, the hitter that's just catching balls? No, they're not getting a touch. So took us about 20 minutes, we got to a point where the ball started with the eventual digger. They did a 75% serve to the hitter. The hitter got a pass, uh, passed the ball to setter. Setter set it outside. Hitter hits the ball at the digger. We knew that, obviously the digger knew that they were getting the ball, but you still have to read the hitter. You don't know if it's going to be on the left side or the right side or high or low or whatever it is. The dig goes to setter. Setter set outside. Hitter hit the ball. The hitter on the digging side hit the ball. So then we went back and said, all right, who's all getting a game-like touch now? And we felt like the digger got really two game-like touches, a serve and a dig. The hitter got a pass and an attack. Both setters got game like reps, and probably the second hitter as well was getting maybe an out of system set or something. So maybe we moved it to 6 or 7 of the contacts in one little rotation were pretty game like. And I think a common misperception, and this is where we really got to, Steve, was we talk about game like the first criticism that people will throw out at the game like coaches is that, well, all you do is you get there, you roll the balls out and tell them to play. That's absolutely not what game like is about. Game like is about making the read and the movement as close to a game situation as possible, or the movement and the read that they're going to see, the things they're going to see in that game. Um, it absolutely is not just let them play and let them figure it out on their own. That's, a good coach is coaching on the averages. Will watch 4, 5, 6 reps, maybe more, maybe 10 by a player, and then the beautiful thing about a drill like that is you take one of the players out and the drill can keep going, and you can talk to a player and say, hey, look, here's what's going on. Your platform is facing this way. Where's the ball going to go? Or your feet are this way. Can you can you face a different direction by changing something? Then get them back in the drill right away so that they can add that skill in what I would say is in contexts, which is the context of the game. That I think, at least for the players, we did that maybe 3, 4, 5 years. My last few years, we did that, and that was the feedback that I got was maybe that was the most important thing that they had gone through in that session, was understanding what it meant to be game like, because everyone throws the term around, and then how to make something like that better. You can do it in every drill.
Yeah.
The just blind blocking drills, where you see players walking through their blocking footwork. Well, why not set a ball for them so that they can read the setter and link the read to the action? There's some fancier words for that, the perception action coupling, but you need to read it and you need to move
Yeah.
based on that read, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's the reason, the reason I wanted to share it here was the idea of it's that thought process that you're taking those coaches and the players through. Okay, players, how could we do this? And it almost becomes part of they've designed the drill, but they also designed it and they know why they designed it. I have right now I have a club player who's quite advanced, and he comes into the gym and he starts running practice. When we have an open gym, he starts doing his thing, and I find that a lot of it's very old school drill like. It's not all entirely that, but it's kind of like, okay, how can we do more with this? And the interesting thing is lately he's been more receptive to that. In the beginning it was like, oh, this is what we do at club, and we're much higher level than this high school program is, blah blah blah. And like, well, that's true, but when you play high school, this is your team. We've got to bring them all along. Here's, and I'll tell them, here's what I'm trying to accomplish with this drill. Here's what I'd like you to learn with this drill. You guys help me. What else would we do? How could we change this to make it better? And as a coach, if you engage them in that kind of problem solving, it takes a while. With a brand new team that doesn't have a lot of volleyball experience, they look at you like, hey, you're the coach, you should tell us. And maybe you got to do a little bit of that in the beginning. But once they start going, hey, that ball I keep getting beat to this side on an attack. I'm like, well, okay, how are you seeing the ball? What are you trying to, why are you standing behind the block when you could be standing inside the block? Oh, yeah, I guess. And, and they begin to figure that out for themselves, and hopefully it sticks. Or you see them, I see them all the time when they get caught inside and the ball goes by and they misread it. And they'll look over at me and I'm like, hey, no problem. I'm not going to tell you what you just did because you already know what you just did. Fix it for next time. and then they're educating themselves and learning from their own errors. And if you don't learn from errors in this sport, you're going to get you're not going to enjoy the sport very much.
Yeah, so I mean that's the ultimate teaching tool. Hopefully, we get players adjusted mentally so that the errors aren't crushing them,
Right.
as opposed to benefiting from them. And that's a constant everyday battle.
Yeah.
We're always talking about how do we accept that the error happened and look for trends in those errors. What is it that you want to do? How do we want this to go? I mean, that's uh, it's the looking forward is so much better than looking backward um, at what went wrong. But anyway,
Well,
um,
before we go, preview of next week.
yeah. So we had hoped to have John Kessel on today. Something must have came up in his schedule. He couldn't. We'll get that rescheduled. And we'll have that discussion over the next weekend. Next week Sunday, we definitely have Dietrich Collins Parker set up. I'm still working on making sure that we have Billy Allen coming on. But between those two, we'll have some. We'll have two interesting conversations next week Sunday. We'll have by Sunday, I think we'll have a Division 3 champion that we can just mention and talk about how that tournament all went. Um, and and those will be, I think, some interesting conversations coming up.
All right, well, great. So if you've been here for our little shortened version, hope you've gotten a couple things you can use in your off season if you're off, and if you're headed into club, hope tryouts went well, and we'll see you next time.